So welcome everyone and thank you for joining. My name is Jeff Krueger and I'm the Business Development Manager here at Versatile Distribution Services. As you know, VDS is an HP OEM integration partner and we're focused on providing HP hardware solutions that support multiple market segments, but mainly we focus on the M&E space. So during the past 10 months, we find that most of our colleagues and customers are working remotely. And as we come out of this pandemic, we believe many companies will adopt a hybrid approach with employees working from home and on-prem. Now, I don't like calling this the new norm, but it's a good description for what we're experiencing. So today, there are different solutions out there to accomplish this type of environment, and we believe that HP has one of the easiest and most cost-effective solutions out there. So we're excited to host our friends from HP, who are going to present HP ZCentral Remote Boost software, formerly known as RGS. This is a very simple, reliable solution allowing employees to work from anywhere on low-powered notebooks, PCs, or even a Mac system while leaving their primary workstation at the office. You'll also learn about HP's ZCentral Connect management software, which allows IT to manage and monitor multiple remote boost connections. So just a quick note before we get started, the webinar will be recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel. And anytime during the presentation, feel free to write your questions in our chat window and they will be answered at the end during a question and answer session. So with that, I'm very pleased to introduce Damien Knox, Z by HP Solutions Specialist, and Rick Hohmann, Z by HP M&E Industry Tech Specialist. So Damien, over to you.
Thank you, Jeff. So without further ado, we will be talking today around our ZCentral solution. So as Jeff had alluded to, there is really three pillars of this, which I will go into. There is a hardware component, which is our ZCentral hardware. Our ZCentral Remote Boost, which people may be familiar with as formerly known as Remote Graphics Software, RGS. And a third pillar now that we have, which is our ZCentral Connect, which is flexible IT management, marrying the ability to access the devices and the hardwares from simple consoles. So again, a way to manage all of this that's going on. As I said, one of the first pillars of this is talking around the hardware. The ZCentral Remote Boost software is not exclusive to running only on Z by HP devices. However, we have some wonderful HP hardware solutions and one newer piece of hardware that I'm going to let Rick Hohmann talk about.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, so back in September, we announced a brand new 1U rackable version of our Z4 desktop workstation. So we've had desktop workstations for a number of years, and we're doing very well. We have a lot of coverage in the media and entertainment industry. I personally, as our media and entertainment specialist in our tech marketing team, work very closely with our software partners like Avid and Adobe and Blackmagic to make sure that their software is able to run well on all of our platforms. And I'm very excited to announce that we have taken that Z4 architecture, which is a leading platform in the editing space for a large part of the industry, and taken that same same platform and shrunk it down into a 1U rackable workstation. So. Yes, thank you, Damien. So what we've done is you can see all the components exploded out here. We're able to get one double wide graphics card in there, so you could get up to like for example, an RTX 8000 graphics card in this platform, and still have another slot available for, say, a fiber channel card or something like that. One of the additions to the Z4 platform that we've got here is that we have built in a 10 gig networking slot right onto the motherboard, so you'll have that as a second network port in addition to the 1 gig slot that's in there. Perfect for going back in your back room, connected to your high-speed storage for all your video editing applications. So please put in any questions you have about the platform. We don't want to spend too much time on that. But one other thing we did want to point out is that the software that Damien's going to be talking about, our RGS software, or now it's renamed Remote Boost, was granted an Emmy, was awarded an Emmy just this year. We had multiple nominations from several studios about how we have saved their bacon, basically, during this whole pandemic season. Allowing them to continue working efficiently from home using Remote Boost to connect to their machines back in their studios. So that's what we're going to be talking about, how this all works, and just thought I'd point out that that recognition that we received earlier this year. Very proud of that. So Damien, back to you.
So thanks for that, Rick. So the one thing, I like this slide because it's a great one-pager to kind of showcase all three of those pillars together, where Rick was talking about our new Z4R. As we move to this almost new norm of people always accessing things remotely, where devices might have been scattered across offices, you know, there is definitely a time where people can start leveraging more of a consolidation. And with rackable solutions like the Z4R and things like all of our Z devices are rackable as is, but Z2 minis, you can really get the idea of like consolidating the actual hardware people connect to right here, as well as that can be, you know, attached to your secured storage. And what we're going to talk about today are the other two pieces about how do you access these devices from remote areas in a nice, convenient factor and work on them as if they are local, but unfortunately, or as the case may be, you're not local. So the first thing we'll talk about is our new ZCentral Remote Boost software, formerly known as RGS. This is really the vehicle to connect from remote device to workstation hardware. So the Remote Boost Sender software, which is required to connect to, runs on Linux as well as Windows. It is included on any Z piece of hardware purchase. So if you buy a new Z4, Z2, Z6, Z8, you have the Remote Boost Sender license, which is required to have the transmitting from. This is also available for purchase on non-HPZ hardware. So while it's nice to have it included with Z, if you have devices that are in your infrastructure that are not Z devices, you're not limited to not being able to run Z Remote Boost Sender. On the receiving end, the device you're connecting from, you are required to have the ZCentral Remote Boost Receiver software. This is free software and works on Windows, Mac OS, and Linux. So as long as you have a receiving, i.e. connecting device that is running one of the major OSs, you can connect into a sender, which is, the sender is where your heavy hardware, where you would have your graphics cards and what you would be doing. So there has been some updates other than just rebranding the name from RGS to ZCentral Remote Boost. There has been some enhancements to the software. The biggest one is we now have better support for Wacom tablets. So especially in the M&E space, people that are using Wacom tablets on their remote device are now able to have a better experience remotely to the machine they're connecting. We've also worked with the dynamic resizing. So if you are, say, in my case example at home, working on two Quad HD displays, you can actually have the sender resized to, if I'm working for right now on a Quad HD and I move to full HD somewhere else, I can have, you know, it resized without actually changing what the pixel out is coming from the sender machine. So if you happen to be moving from one machine to another and changing jobs, you don't necessarily have the changes in graphics output that might, you know, render jobs useless for the time being. You also now have the ability to do touch gestures through RGS as well. So if you have a device that has touch, you can be using that. As I mentioned, you have multi-display, as in my case, running multiple QHD up to 4K multi-display to support. Remote USB as well. So if you are on a laptop and you need to connect USB locally and have it act as if it's on that sending machine, that is possible. You can also turn off remote USB. So again, if you are in an environment that does not allow for USB connectivity, that is something that is flexible, can be turned on, or it can be disabled. Graphic hardware acceleration as well. This is what we allow for if you are on low network bandwidths with advanced video compression. You can optimize your frame rates and all that, so you can still work remotely through sometimes some slower than optimal network connection, so you don't necessarily always have to be connected on the same physical LAN, so it allows for things over Wi-Fi, etc. OS, as I mentioned, we have multiple OS support, being on the senders Linux as well as Windows, and on the receivers you can have Linux, Windows, as well as Mac. And HP Velocity, that allows you to break from the network limitations. It's packet priority, so it really helps with improvement in latency on wide area networks and network traffic. And as I said, software included, so any Z device, the ZCentral Remote Boost software, formerly RGS, is included with that. So there's no need to buy an additional license. If you buy a Z system, it is included. So the next thing I want to touch base is ZCentral Connect software. So you now are running a load of Z systems, and you're connecting from a lot of remote devices. How do you manage it? How do you know what people are connecting to where, and how can you help to better optimize it? So ZCentral Connect software allows you to have a way to kind of have a management engine around all of that. So what you would have is the ZCentral Connect managing software, which is put onto the machines. The pool of machines, say in this case, it's in a rack. These could be installed on, workstations, maybe in an office. And then you have a client that you put on the receiving device. And then there is a central agent, which basically running Active Directory. And so that's one of the key caveats. You have to be an Active Directory shop to be using this. So you can manage the pools of people connecting to the devices they'd be connecting to. So you would say, in this example, here is a 54U rack of 1Us. You might say these 10 top devices are assigned to a certain group. So you could come in here and say, make these 10 machines this pool, and when these Active Directory users come in and they're looking for a machine, this is the devices they have access to. And you can do it via pools. You can do it via one-to-one connection if you want. It really is kind of more of the flexibility that you might be looking to manage it from, but so you don't have to do it one way or another, but it gives you a way to kind of centrally do all of that. In addition to being able to manage, there's some other benefits for management. You can have hardware alerts. So using vPro, Intel vPro, you can tell if the machine is hanging up during boot. You can, reboot the machine. So if it has a blue screen, you could do that. It also allows for an LED locator control for a Z4R. So if you have a 54U rack of Z4Rs and machine 12 goes down on the console, you could say, turn on the indicator light to machine, whichever machine it is. So somebody going over to the rack will know exactly which machine they're looking for. One-click access is mentioned. So again, being able to remotely access the device via one click. No longer do you have to remember the names of all of the machines out there. Again, one click, you can go into a pool, click the one you need. Centralized power on and off. So again, from this console using vPro, you can turn machines on and off if they're not in use to help either save power. If you have, say it might be a school environment and the machines won't be in use for many hours on the day, you can have them all, shut down centrally at one time and brought up at another time to, again, just to optimize power usage. And you can manage connections remotely. So again, you can see which users are moving to devices. If a machine goes down, you can have it removed from pools. So users no longer have to kind of worry about remembering where they were connecting to. They just go into the ZCentral Connect software, and as IT management, you can manage that for them. And with that, that's going to kind of go into the use case, and I've basically have kind of mentioned, but more optimally. So if you have, for example, a company of say 300 employees, and in this example, not only do you have video editors like that might be their marketing departments and whatnot, you also have engineering. So you actually have multiple user groups in some companies that still need access to high-end workstation compute. So from an ITDM, your problem is, okay, I'm going to be managing similar types of workstations. However, different user groups are going to be needing them. So how do I, kind of manage everything together, but still give people the flexibilities and the needs that they have? You have your video editors here in Spain that are, working with high-end workstations for doing their job, but they also have counterparts in other countries, and they also want to work on large files. So much as what we showed at that beginning, having a pool of machines in one central location connected to high speed and high density storage is really great, because they all are going to one location for their devices and files, but they may be distributed throughout the globe. And in this case, then you have engineers here that are even further distributed across the globe in Australia that still have to have that same type of access and connectivity. So again, as you're spanning the globe and having people all over needing access to not only high-end compute, but large access files, how do you put all of that together while still giving them the ability to work on this equipment, also not having that equipment all over the globe? So this is where the ZCentral solution makes great sense, because again, you can consolidate a lot of powerful, and in this photo you have Z4Rs with some of our smaller Z2 minis all racked together. Your ITDM, as we kind of mentioned, using ZCentral Connect, can kind of manage all of these devices and say, this, bay on the left, this might be the pool for your video editors, and this pool on the right is the devices for the engineers. So they have their engineering software on here, and your marketing and M&E groups have their software over here. And so your video editors, they might be on their, local laptop that might have a discrete GPU and might be able to do some things, but they need to, push larger jobs off. So they access their machines via the ZCentral Remote Boost and have that working on heavier machinery on their lighter laptop as if it was there. And then at the same time, you have engineers also using that, connecting. And again, as from an ITDM, they can make sure people are having access to the right devices. And if anything happens to the editor's devices or the engineer's devices, it's all centrally managed. So they're only needing to go back to their data center to, reboot or do whatever to a machine. So with that, I know we wanted to leave a fair amount of time for questions and answers, because while this is a really exciting piece of software and easy for us to explain, you probably have questions about uses and implementations and all that. So with that, I want to turn it over to question and answers. So.
Yeah, Damien, I've been trying to answer a couple of the questions that came in. One thing I'm not sure of on the sales side, but we had a question from Zeke about the ZCentral 4R, and what's the lead time on that? I don't know if you have your fingers on that pulse, right?
Yeah, so right now, for a custom order, I think the lead time is around 4 weeks. Again, just given the current environment with COVID, depending on some components, especially when you start talking about higher end graphics cards, which I'm assuming is going to be a large focus for the audience here today, it can sometimes be a little bit longer, depending if, a particular, say, an RTX 6000 or something is required. But typically the lead time for the Z4R is 4 weeks. And I think you did mention it is Avid approved or qualified, correct? Yep. Yeah. All right. So I'll just read these. Is there any chance Remote Boost can support more than the default display? For example, audio and video out from AJA Kona or Blackmagic Decklink card, which is independent of the primary GPU output. And to be clear, both display sources, GPU and third-party card, I/O cards simultaneously. Okay, so you've responded to that. So that's okay.
Remote Boost software doesn't have access to that because it's all going on the card. So we're exploring ways to use possibly NDI, for example, for getting that information out and then shipping that across the network through the sender. So we're just exploring this right now. We don't have any plan of record implementations for you to talk about right now, for us to talk about.
Yeah, and so is ZCentral Connect included on Z workstations, or is it sold separately? If separately, how is it licensed? Okay, this is a great question, and I think you answered a little bit, but yeah, so ZCentral Connect, the management engine, is not included, just the ZCentral Remote Boost, the connection type is. From a ZCentral Connect licensing, if you have, basically a number of license you need will be the maximum number of concurrent connections at a peak time. So if you have 100 Z workstations in, let's just say, a rack or whatever, right? You have 100 machines and 200 users. but at the maximum amount of time, 50 users will be the max that are simultaneously connected. 50 licenses is what you need to have for ZCentral Connect. So as people go in, they pull a license. As they disconnect, that license frees up for the next person to use within ZCentral Connect. So the amount of licenses you need is the max number of connections at the peak time. So it doesn't matter like if you'd have all 200 people over a day connect, if they were all coming in and out as they go. It's just what is your peak number at one time? That is the licensing number you need. Mac client to Windows Workstation keyboard remapping. Yes. So there is in our HP performance. Well, so this is kind of interesting, right? So Rick, I'm just thinking, so within HP Performance Advisor, you can do the switch the keyboard layout setting. So that would, from a remote machine, that would then make it match up to the Mac device as long as the workstation you're on has Performance Advisor installed, correct?
No, well, actually not. I mean, yes, you can do that if you want your muscle memory, but the control key and the command key are the two that map to each other on the two different platforms, and those will act as they should when you're coming from a Mac platform. So Damien mentioned that yes, we do have the remote boost receiver, which is the piece you need on your MacBook or whatever. That will map all the keys correctly when you're talking to a Windows machine. Everything will do what you expect without even involving Performance Advisor.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So yes, it will actually. So you don't even need Performance Advisor to get that mapping to work.
No.
Okay.
That's for a different use.
Oh, okay. Todd asks, so when will you add LDAP for authentication on ZCentral? If that's not on the roadmap, it needs to be. LDAP, I'm assuming that's what I'm talking about, the call I'm having later, where I'm finding out. I don't know. I guess we can come back with that. I'm not necessarily sure where on the roadmap it is, but I know it is, at least in terms of authentication on ZCentral, I know those are things that are they're aware of.
Right. I don't know exactly on the wish list where that lands either. So,
yeah.
We got another question coming in here. Read that one.
Could you explain where you would use a remote boost license server versus not needing the license server at all? Okay, so remote boost license server. So if you had non-Z devices, so if you're running Z, you already have remote boost, a license basically, or lack thereof, embedded in the board. The way remote boost works is when it installs the sender, it looks first off is, am I on an HP Z device? If the answer is yes, it will install. If it says no, I am not a Z device, it then says, do you have a physical license, like a static license key? And if the answer is yes, you give it its license, it installs. If that answer is no, it goes to the third thing going, do you have a floating license? And so a remote boost license server would only be needed if you have non-Z devices and that you were pooling floating licenses from. If you are buying static licenses, you will not need a remote boost license server. And if you have Z systems, you don't need a remote boost license server. You would only need a license server if you were utilizing floating licenses for non-Z devices. And by non-Z devices, non-Z as your senders. Hopefully that answers it. Would you agree, Rick?
Yes.
Okay. So ZCentral licenses are floating licenses, correct? Or the ZCentral Connect licenses are floating. Where is the application hosted? Does it need to be on a dedicated server? So the ZCentral Connect license server would be, in essence, the same machine that you were using as the ZCentral Connect administrator. So because what will happen on your laptop receiver is you connect to that ZCentral Connect administrator to connect to a machine. So that administrative machine would basically be also administering your licenses, since it is actually seeing all of the devices that are connecting in through ZCentral Connect. In essence, the administrator machine for ZCentral Connect would also be the ZCentral Connect licensing server. Would that be fair, Rick?
Yes, that's accurate.
Okay.
And then one more from Richard. I understand FlexLM base licensing for Boost, but is there additional licensing needed to use Connect to manage Boost access? Yes. All right. So as we talked about, the Boost itself is free on HP machines for the sender. The receiver component, which you put on your client machine, is free on all platforms. But if you're going to use Boost from a non-HP machine, you do need to buy a license. And the Connect license is completely separate from that. So even if you are using HP machines, you must have a Connect license allocated, for the number of machines the number of connections you're going to make.
And I think the one thing you kind of stressed again, the ZCentral Connect is optional, as in you don't need to manage all of the devices centrally through Connect. Many people over the years have been going the old-fashioned way of, I'm user X and I know machine Y is what I'm connecting to, and I'm just using ZCentral remote. If that's how you want to continue doing things, then yes, the ZCentral Connect licenses aren't needed, but the whole idea of ZCentral Connect is to move away from that model and to centrally manage everything. So again, right. That's where ZCentral Connect licenses are required and why they are only available via purchase. They are not included in anything because the ZCentral Connect broker management is a add-on to what we have already been doing. Last question, ZCentral Connect, is it recommended to run this on its own system or server? Ideally, yes, just because of if you are using this machine to also manage the devices, it makes sense to usually have that as a dedicated machine, only because if you're having that machine also managing other non-related things and something brings it down, you could potentially be bringing that down too. So I think it's always recommended if you have the resources to run something dedicated, you just take away that risk that something else might inadvertently bring it down. Rick, would you have any other?
Yeah, no, that's right. You want to sequester the server activity. It doesn't take a lot of resources to run, so you could run it on a Z2 Mini, for example, but it just should be separate from your actual workhorse machines where you're doing production work.
Yep, that was the last question. So for anyone that didn't have time to get a question in, our contact info is on the screen. Please feel free to reach out to us. For any end users on the call and you have an interest of learning more, reach out to your local reseller. And if you don't have one, then reach out to us and we'll be happy to connect you with one in your area. And thank you, Damien and Rick. I appreciate your time. And thanks everybody for being on the call to learn about ZCentral remote solutions from HP. We wish everyone the very best. Stay healthy and safe.
Thank you.